Hello, welcome. So, it's the first time me doing a video like this. I don't usually I just upload a video of me in M Plus or in Raid or whatever and call it a day. But this case, this video, I would like to talk about the viability of Mage in M Plus. And if you decide not to flavor of the month, reroll like every other idiot, just because a certain YouTuber told them to, like Shaman, Org, or whatever, then this video is for you if you still are looking to play Mage, or if you're playing it and want to like maximize your damage or get some tips and tricks or like see which spec you should play. This video is in context of high keys, so this is not gonna be applicable really to like +8s, +7s, etc. It's only really gonna be applicable to like +14s, 15s, yeah? So when we look at which spec you should play and the highest representation of Mage specs in M+, you can see that, or like overall spec representation, let's just say, if we just go to DPS specs, you can see that obviously enhancement is just everywhere, like, and AUG as well. I think I'm not going to dispute that enhancement is broken. That it is broken, and there's no way that if you out DPS a mage as a mage and enhancement shaman, that enhancement shaman just sucks. He just sucks. Yeah, like get him coaching from someone because that guy is doing something wrong in his life. Yeah, and AUG is also auto included in a lot of groups because obviously it buffs the enhancement, which is uber broken. And it also buffs the healer, buffs the tank, which is something that you need in high keys, yeah? On top of that, it has like shit ton of utility that you need in high keys. Obviously, healer usually is a priest now, and resto, and tank is usually a prot paladin, right? But when it comes to the third DPS slot, I actually think it's a bit flexible. I would say a lot of EU teams or like high pushers or whatever are very hard stuck on the idea of Frost Decay. Yeah, Frost Decay, don't get me wrong, it's a good spec. It does pretty good AoE, it does pretty good single target, but I just think it's a little bit overrated. Sure, it has like AMZ stuff like that, but it feels like a lot of groups or even when you're pugging high keys, people are just like looking for it like as if they needed like enhancement shaman. I think the difference between enhancement and frost is huge. Yeah, it's not as broken. Yeah, I think the third slot is very flexible. You can see that in some situations there's there's the frost decays, then there's Asarok, which is also being included in a lot of groups, which suffers from the same thing that, in my opinion, frost decay does. It does a lot of overall damage, which I think is something that you don't really need. Yeah, like who gives a shit if you're doing 20 billion AoE damage, but then you get to a single target boss and you're doing like tank damage or like AUG damage. Yeah, I just think that Assassination Rogue is very overrated. Yeah, it has Shroud, but Shroud you don't really need for half the dungeons. Yeah, not half the dungeons, like 90% of them, where you only really need the Siege of Borealis. Yeah, so, but you can still take it. Yeah, like I said, it's flexible. The first slot is flexible, and you can see that Mage has some representation in the hierarchies. Yeah, and kind of spoiled it. Yeah, it's a Frost Mage, mostly. There's also some Arcane Mages, and there's like minimal Fire Mages. The Fire Mage is inting. Yeah, you don't pick that in high keys, and we'll talk about why. Obviously, you can see some Red Tree as well, but you don't play Red Tree because you don't want to class stack with the Protection Paladin because you don't play anything else. And as you can see, in these highest down keys, these are graphs. This graph is just 15 and above. If we, for example, went to 14, pretty much the same thing, except that more Arcane Mages are popping up. Yeah, if we go like 12s, yeah, if it loads, there's also some Fire Mages. Yeah, the meta really doesn't matter there. It's just people are really stuck into the, let's say, God comp in like 14s and 15s, yeah. And you can see here in the highest down keys forever, you know, pretty diverse, yeah. Like in the terms of in the context of the third DPS, obviously. Like in every comp, you can see that there's a guaranteed prot, disc, Enha, and Orc. That's guaranteed. But then you have this Asian team. They run Frost Mage. Then you have some team here running Frost Decay. Then again Frost Decay. Then Frost Mage, the same guy. Frost Decay, Frost Decay, Frost Decay. Also Boomkin. Forgot to mention that is a pretty decent pick. Same thing though as Assassination Rogue. It does insane amount of overall AoE damage, but its single target is just laughable. Yeah, it's more of, if I had to guess why people pick it, it's the verse buff. And I don't see any other reason than the verse buff, yeah. And maybe Innervate if the healer needs it, but I don't know. But you know, you can see some Frost Mage as well here. Asian team again, Frost Mage, Frost Mage, Frost Mage. So Frost Mage is actually not that bad, or Mage overall. Viability also has been playing Arcane Mage for quite a while until he decided not to, because he just admitted that Frost Mage is better in every key except for maybe like Mists, because of just how the dungeon works and because of the first boss, yeah. So how come Frost Mage so broken? How come, for example, Fire Mage is not picked? Yeah, like why is Fire Mage not good? You know, it's been meta in BFA in Shadowlands or whatever. Why are we not picking it now? The reason is because it doesn't have single target damage. Yeah, you can see I brought up this little advantages and disadvantages of each spec. So if we just look at the Fire Mage one here, you can see that Fire Mage, it does massive AoE damage on AoE with the Living One build. You can see that in my previous videos on my YouTube channel. It does insane amount of AoE. I think it's on par with maybe on par, yeah. But what it struggles is the single target, yeah. You have cooldowns for nearly every pack if you play properly, because if you play properly with the Glorious Incandescence buff, also combustion cooldown is like 40 seconds on average from my experience, which is enough in a key like 13 and above, 12, that you have cooldowns for every pack, which is very valuable, or for bosses as well, yeah. There's like not really any gaps between your cooldowns, yeah, so you don't have any downtime really. That's assuming that you're doing a hierarchy and that the trash pack doesn't die within 10 seconds though, which is one of the disadvantages here. Which, you know, you could say it's a disadvantage for Arcane and Frost as well, but you need the pack, from my experience, you need it to at least survive 15 seconds. For you to get the full combustion duration, and then maybe some hypothermia, so maybe like 17 seconds even on top of that, yeah. You have no single target. That's the disadvantage. Yeah, I just open this up real quick. Just Arakara 14. Yeah, there's only a few of them because Fire Mage was not meta. Boss damage comparison between Frost and Fire. Yeah, and you can see that Fire Mage does like 380k, but I think October 18th was pre-nerf, so this is just invalid. Okay, there's some guy which did a lot of damage, but I guess that's just item level difference. Yeah, but the single target is not good. You can see that maybe if we go pre-nerf item level in mind, it would be doing like 360k single target maybe. But then you have Frost Mage, which like 440, 443, 430. You're just doing tremendously more single target damage, which is very valuable in keys. Yeah, and a lot of these statistics are pre-nerf. Fire Mage, for no apparent reason, but it's single target nerf by around 7%, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know why. So you are missing a lot of single target, and Mythic Plus is just not about the AoE, like I mentioned in the context when I was talking about Assassination Rogues and Frost Decays. You need the single target, yeah. And I think what keeps it also back is, you could say maybe that the versatility is not the best stat, but I don't think that's a biggie. But I just think, personally, that Frost Mages and Arcane Mages defensive is better. Arcane Mage has the access to the best barrier in the game, and Frost Mage is double Ice Cold. I just think if you are playing really well in M+, like, you will not really use the Cauterize unless you're not paying attention to something, or you just get, surprisingly like targeted by like few mobs in a trash pack, yeah, or something like that, yeah. I think, personally, I think the fact that Frostmage stacks a bit more verse and has access to Ice Cold, and also Arcane has access to the better barrier, I also think that's a bit better, at least in my opinion. Maybe someone else would say, yeah, I just prefer cheat death. I agree, I prefer cheat death in a raiding environment. It's good to have, but I think if you're paying attention to your defensive cooldowns in an M+, the double Ice Cold much more valuable. Yeah. So again, fire pros, you have cooldowns for every trash bag if you play properly. You have a lot of AoE damage, but what keeps it down is the single target, which is not existent. You're basically doing Shadow Priest level of single target. Yeah, it's bad. It's bad. So moving on about Frostmage. Frostmage just does massive AoE damage with cooldowns only. I would say maybe a little bit below Fire Mage, which doesn't really matter as long as it does high AoE. It doesn't matter if there's a difference between few hundred K. What is more important that I think it might be the second or the first. I think it's the second highest single target damage spec in the game in M+, at least. I think when I was doing Stonevolt with some enhancement sham, which was really cracked, he was either out DPSing me by a little bit on single target, or we were on par. Yeah, but if there was anything else than enhancement, I would have out DPSed them, no problem on single target. And that is something that you need in M+ as well. Yeah. One thing I didn't mention about fire is that if you play the Flamestruck build, you don't have a priority damage. If you play the Pyroblast Living Bomb build, which is kind of shit, but playable, you will have some priority damage, but not as much. Whereas Frost, you have a lot of priority damage. Yeah, you have a lot of priority damage, and you have a lot of funnel damage. Yeah, you have massive single target damage, and you have massive AoE. On top of that, you have passive slow and freeze. So maybe if the tank, sometimes they kite in some dungeons, that might be useful, but not really in many situations. Likes versatility. For me at least, it's I think my second best stat. I'm hovering around 10 or 11k, but don't use this as a yes, get versatility on your character. Please sim yourself. Yeah, don't follow. If someone tells you, yeah, you need to get haste verse, don't follow it blindly. Always sim yourself on raid bots. Yeah. And it's highly mobile, but I think every spec is highly mobile, or both on single target on AoE. Maybe Arcane is a little bit less mobile than those two on single target, but it's not really an issue in any of the anywhere. Yeah, it's just less mobile, so you can't just like AD like an idiot. But yeah. But what are Frost disadvantages? Obviously, it has to have some. Yeah, well, you're not doing enhancement damage. I've been kind of like overselling it. You are doing a lot of damage, but you will most likely still get out DPS by an enhancement overall. Assassination Rogue, and maybe Frost Decay. Yeah, they will out DPS you overall, but I would say don't get fixated on that much, because it's not just about overall, but it's also about the single target where you should be dominating. Yeah. But what's the Frost disadvantages? So you're kind of dependent on procs. Yeah. On the Frozen Orb Spell Frost teachings, because sometimes you enter a pack, you're gonna get like 10 of them in a row, and you'll be doing insane amount of DPS. And then the other pack, you're just starving and you're just like spamming Ice Lances into Glacial, and you're not doing shit. So very reliant on RNG, in my opinion. Not as much, but it is definitely there, in my opinion. Yeah, I can notice the damage difference between getting high rolling a lot of Frozen Orb procs and not high rolling anything. You're also very reliant on that, not only on AoE, but on single target. And I also think sometimes you're kind of reliant on time anomaly procs as well. Yeah. From my experience, some people might disagree, because some people are still stuck in BFA, like dogs, where they think, oh, Frost Mage has a flat damage profile. Well, you're not reliant on Icy Veins. You are. You're not doing damage outside of Icy Veins. Yeah, not on AoE at least. Yeah. From my experience, if I have cooldowns, if I have Icy Veins ready and everything ready, I do tremendous damage. Then the other pack that I don't have Icy Veins, I do tank damage, which is not bad, because Protection Paladin does a lot of damage, but it's still not, like flat damage profile. Yeah, like some people are still hard stuck in their head. Yeah, you are, in my opinion, very reliant on Icy Veins. Yeah, if you misuse Icy Veins in a dungeon, you're gonna struggle. If you, for example, pop Icy Veins at when the trash pack is about to die within the next 10 or 15 seconds instead of saving it, it's very bad. Yeah. Which brings me to my next point. Oh, these 2 points are kind of connected. So, from my experience, you will have cooldowns every other pack, basically. So, if I have Enhancement Shaman, it actually sometimes lines up nicely that I have Icy Veins for one pack, he has Ascendance for one pack, etc. Yeah, sometimes. But pack needs to live at least 40 seconds and above to get full usage out of the Icy Veins. Yeah, because you pop Icy Veins, the pack dies in like 10-20 seconds, you're not getting the full usage, therefore you just wasted it. Yeah, so you have to think harder about using Icy Veins and when to use them than Fire Mage, because for Fire Mage you do your combustion, you do a hypothermia which takes like 15 or 20 seconds and you're done. And with Icy Veins, it's a much longer duration, so it kind of feels bad if the pack or boss or whatever just dies before you get the full usage off, yeah? And on top of that, if the tank moves like a dog around too much, he can potentially get the mobs out of your blizzard and out of your frozen orbs, so it won't do your maximum damage, yeah? Which Fire Mage doesn't struggle with anymore because you're not playing Flame Patch. Therefore, you know, just to Flame Strike, the tank can move, no problem, yeah? So this is some disadvantage I noticed in some dungeons when the tank moves too much, which, in my opinion, the other 2 specs don't really have, yeah. Which brings me to Arcane. Personally, I will admit I have not played Arcane as much as I would like to in M+. I tried it a few times, I didn't like it, and I just came to the conclusion that Frost is better anyway, so what's the point of playing it? So with Arcane, like Frost and like Fire, this applies to every spec really that is in this list. It's dependent on cooldowns, and it's depending on the spell Frost teaching or reset. Yeah, because Frost, it resets your Frozen Orb cooldown. For Arcane, it just launches an Arcane Orb. Yeah, and if you, for example, outside of the cooldowns, you don't get anything, or even inside of your cooldowns, you don't get many, your damage will suffer. Yeah, and that's what I kind of didn't like about Arcane, is that I felt like it was way too RNG reliant. And even in the cases where I got insane amount of RNG, I was just not doing the damage that I would be imagining to do. Yeah. This is one silly disadvantage, but it kind of, you have to follow it every single dungeon. You have to position yourself well so that you don't accidentally ninja pull with Arcane Orb. And that includes the Arcane Orb that you press, and that includes the Arcane Orb that you get from Spellforce teachings. Because if you randomly just launch it in front of you, you might ninja pull, which I've noticed that people do sometimes when I've been coaching a few Arcane mages, like video review. I've noticed that sometimes they just position themselves, they don't think about it really, which I don't blame them, there's a lot to think about. And then Arcane Orb just launches, ninja pulls the back, and everyone gets mad. Yeah. This is something that you have to also keep in mind, besides like, okay, I have to interrupt this mob, I have to pop my cooldowns in this specific way, I also have to position myself here, so I don't ninja pull potentially. Yeah. I think the AoE rotation for Arcane is I don't know, it's more reactive in my opinion than Frost, but I could be wrong because you have to react to the Spellfrost teaching or resets. Yeah, but that's just my opinion. I didn't like it as much. And from my experience, when I've been coaching people Arcane, I don't run into that issue as much personally, but it is very easy to screw up your cooldowns. Yeah. I have seen so many times people just off-sync their shifting power completely, or pop touch when their surge is on like a 20-second cooldown, and then it's completely off-sync. Yeah, it's very easy to just screw up your cooldowns, and that just snowballs throughout the entire dungeon. Yeah, because with Frost, it's just like, okay, I just press my Icy Veins and I don't care. Yeah, but for the optimal Arcane first rotation, you obviously need Evocation, Surge, and Touch. Yeah, and sometimes people just, for example, have Surge ready, but they have Touch on cooldown for like the next 20 seconds because they screwed it up from the previous pull. Yeah, or they have shifting power completely off sync. Yeah, and they sometimes even forget to use it. So, in my opinion, very easy to screw up as this spec compared to Frost. But that's just my personal opinion. Like I said, I have not played Arcane to that level where I would like, you know, as to that level as Fire Mage or Frost Mage, where I've really played it for like 3 weeks in M+, straight up. Yeah. I've only talked about the disadvantages, really, so you can see how biased I am about Arcane. But Arcane Mage actually does have some pros. Yeah, I think it's better than Fire. You can see in this write-up, I think Arcane is 100% better than Fire because I think it does good AoE. It does insane amount of priority damage, especially if you do the final rotation, not the full AoE. It does insane amount of priority damage. It does. Don't get fooled by the massive ward. You're not gonna be doing more than enhancement still, but it is still better than Fire, and I think it's slightly worse than Frost Mage in M+. Yeah. So to me, when I kind of compare Arcane Mage and Frost Mage, I just see Arcane Mage as slightly weaker version of the Frost Mage, you could say. Yeah, like it does less AoE and does less single target. Yeah, like I said earlier, Wildy has been playing it in M+, but he has also swapped from Arcane Mage to Frost Mage because he just said that the AoE numbers are not there in some dungeons. Yeah, you're also sort of, could say, target capped as Arcane because even though Arcane Orb does tremendous amount of damage now on AoE, well, not tremendous. That's a lot of more AoE damage than it did in previous patch with Sun Fury. If you play I forgot the name, Spellslinger. But your barrage still hits only 5 targets, yeah. So, but you could make the same argument about Ice Lance or Glacial Spike, yeah. So, Arcane just does less damage. It has Prismatic Barrier, which is useful in some dungeons. Yeah, in my opinion, again, it's better than Cauterize if you can plan around it well, at least in my opinion. But that's pretty much where its utility ends. So, just to sum it up, Fire Mage does massive AoE, does no single target, does no prio. Frost Mage does massive AoE, does massive single target, and does pretty good priority or funnel damage. Yeah, I actually think Arcane Mage's priority is better. So Arcane Mage does really good AoE, really good single target, and massive priority damage. Because if you touch the mage at one target and you just funnel off of it, it's just gonna perish. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's better than Frost's. It might be. Not entirely sure on that, or it might be on par, but I don't think it matters because you should just be picking Frost in this context, yeah? For example, if we look here just on logs, just one example of average DPS of Frost Mage and Arcane Mage. This is overall, obviously. In M+, we can see that Frost Mages in 14 Arakara are averaging 2.1 mil, 2.1, 2.1, 2 mil, around the 2 mil mark. When we check Arcane Mage, see that, you know, there's some guy which high rolled 2 mil and then just 1.8, 1.7, 1.6, 1.5. Yeah, there's obviously more factors to it. So, for example, if you have Vengeance, Demon Hunter, or Havoc, or if you're getting PIs or some other stuff, the number will be higher than compared to a person which doesn't get it. So. But you can see that on average, Frost Mage does perform better overall. Yeah, and like I showed you earlier, it's the same stuff with boss damage. Yeah, if I just go to boss damage here, damage to bosses and damage to bosses, I only compared between Frost and Fire. You can see that, like I said earlier, that Arcane does pretty good single target. Yeah, it's just where it struggles is the AoE. Yeah, I think they're on par. In my opinion, Frost Mage does a little bit less single target. Arcane Mage does a little bit less single target. But all in all, if you want to play Arcane Mage in 13s, 14s, 15s, I think you could. I don't think it's a troll. Yeah, you should probably be playing Frost, but I think it's very viable. The only troll spec is really Fire Mage. If you pick that in a 15, I think it's a bit of a troll. Yeah, like we can see here, 14 City of Threats, comparison between Arcane Mage and Frost Mage. We can see that on average, yeah, kind of identical. Yeah, like obviously Frost Mage does a bit more. Yeah, obviously the second boss carries it because that's a full 2 target cleave, but yeah, it's around the same. If we check like a pure single target-ish dungeon, we could, for example, check probably Grim Battle. So if we just look at the Grim Battle, Arcane Mages here on 14s are doing 450k, Frost Mages around the same number. Yeah? But if we look at overall damage, overall, 1.9 mil, Wildy, yeah, or 1.8 mil. And Frost Mage just like slightly higher. Yeah, so I think if you want to play Arcane, you can, but I still think that Frost Mage is a bit better. Yeah. So the conclusion of this video and the point of this video was to just show you which spec is meta. Maybe try to convince people that like Mage is not as bad as they think. Yeah, I think Mage is very viable. You could see the representation here. Not bad. I think people are a little bit hard stuck on the Frost DK and Assassination Rogue, as we can see that the top teams, like the top keys overall, they have Frost Mages there, so it's not a troll. You can definitely play it, yeah. You can definitely play it, yeah. But yeah, the conclusion was to show you how bad Fire Mage is. Yeah, just people have been asking me for a comparison between Fire Mage and Frost. I just included Arcane Mage here because why not? I think Arcane Mage is a valid spec that you can play. But yeah, conclusion basically, I've wrote it up here. Arcane just does single target and AoE well, but it's AoE, but it struggles relative to Frost. Yeah, you can see that Arcane single target pretty on par with the Frost Mage in M+. It's just that the AoE is where it struggles. Yeah, Fire does insane AoE, but its single target is shit. Yeah. And you do need the single target in M+ as well. So yeah, thank you for watching. If you have any questions, just shoot me a DM on Discord or comment down below. But yeah, I hope this answered all your questions that you had about Mage, about the specs which are viable. And yeah, thank you very much for watching and see you next time.